Terror in the Big Easy and a Texas connection. Let's get dialed in. Hello and welcome to a Texas Talkin' special report. Tonight, we're talking about a story that feels like it was ripped straight out of a bad thriller, but unfortunately, it's all too real. A devastating radical Islamic terrorist attack in New Orleans has left the nation shocked, heartbroken, and asking one question: how did this happen? And more importantly, is there more to this story than meets the eye? Sources are now pointing to a disturbing possibility, a connection between the New Orleans attacker and an alleged terror cell operating right here in Texas. Not in some far-flung border town, but in Harris County. That's right, in the heart of Texas, in a county that is home to Houston, the fourth largest city in America. How does this happen? How do extremists set up shop in a community like Harris County without anyone sounding the alarm? And why aren't our leaders, Republicans and Democrats alike, doing more to secure the safety of American citizens? We'll dig into how this alleged terror cell operates, why local and federal authorities miss the signs, and what this means for every single one of us. Are we looking at a failure of intelligence or something far worse? And of course, you won't want to miss the big question: who's responsible for allowing this to happen? Because someone is. Joining us to help cut through the noise is Houston Police Department Sergeant and former candidate for Harris County Sheriff, Glenn Cowan. We've got all the details, exclusive insights, and yes, the hard truths you won't hear anywhere else. Stay with us. This is one you can't afford to miss. And returning to Texas Talkin' is my friend, Houston Police Department Sergeant Glenn Cowan. Glenn, thanks for coming back on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Shiloh. It's great to be here.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm bringing you on under unfortunate circumstances, of course, and that is in light of the recent terrorist attack in New Orleans, a radical Islamic terrorist attack. I want to ask you, Glenn, how does apparently a terror cell set up shop in Harris County, Texas?
Well, Shiloh, I'll tell you what happens is when you don't have a sheriff that's watching his own county, these types of things happen. Right now, we've got a sheriff that is more concerned with social justice issues. And look, I'm all about equality. Let's treat everybody with love and fairness. That's our Christian values, right? But as a sheriff, you have to be in a very mechanical mindset. Criminal justice is work. It's about doing the basics, the groundwork. It's about being accountable and looking at your scope of jurisdiction to find out what's going on with the people that have entrusted you to do a job and to make sure that they're safe. And so when you're too busy with marching in parades or planting gardens because you have this theory that that's going to reduce crime, that's not it, Shiloh. You've got to engage in anti-terrorism efforts in order to see what's going on and to help those people that voted you in to have that peace of mind knowing that they're being protected.
Glenn, what do authorities know right now about this Islamic terror cell in Harris County?
Well, right now, they believe that this individual worked as a lone wolf. Right now, they don't have any evidence to show, thank goodness, that it was a cell at this point. So we think that he was working alone and that he was radicalized probably online with whoever, we don't know who. And so the community around there said that he seemed generally to be a nice person, but there were some telltale signs with his family members. They said that he was acting strange and things like that. So at some point, something went wrong with this individual. He got radicalized, got some really crazy views. And as a matter of fact, the FBI found in his information, it looked like he had intended to actually harm his own family. Thank God he didn't do that, but unfortunately went to New Orleans and did it there.
Killed 15 people, at least 15 last time I checked. So
Yeah.
just for the purposes of clarity, are there suspicions of terror cells or a terror cell in Harris County in Houston?
You know, I suspect that there is. And when I was running for sheriff, I was the only one that said that we had active terrorists in Harris County. And we know this because we are a nexus for trafficking in this area, geographic area. So we have trafficking, human trafficking, drugs trafficking, weapons trafficking. I've got a friend that's connected to ICE, and he said, or excuse me, customs, and he said that they see a lot of weapons right now going to South America, coming out of our area to South America. Makes you wonder what's going on down there. But there's a lot of a nexus, an interconnected network of bad actors they don't have anything planned good for us, Shiloh. Right now, China is investing billions of dollars in Mexico, right across the border. As a matter of fact, right on the border of Texas. And China is operating. We know that he's working with the cartels down there. We know that they're working with criminal gangs, and it's not good. So we've got leadership right now that is asleep at the wheel. Not only Harris County, but a lot of other left-leaning counties that don't want to look at the problem. In Shiloh, I was so disappointed today. When Biden said we're not going to allow the terrorists to have safe haven, but yet you tore down the wall.
Yeah.
You railed and preached against protecting the people of the United States, and this is what happens. Yeah, this terrorist was homegrown, but it certainly doesn't help anything that we don't have any protection on our borders.
Absolutely. And speaking of how this all happened, obviously, when somebody orchestrates and carries out one of these heinous acts, a high level of planning, I suspect, would be involved prior to the incident taking place. How do you suspect law enforcement may have missed what should have been fairly clear signs that something amiss was going on with this fella?
Well, with law enforcement, they need the resources to do their job. So, in order to keep a perimeter safe, like in New Orleans, for instance, they can ask for the resources. Doesn't mean they'll always necessarily get it. With this condition, it's a lesson learned, right? I don't want to bash the New Orleans Police Department. They're already overworked, understaffed as it is. Were mistakes made in setting up a good perimeter? Yes, they were. But look, the way I look at it is, and I told a friend of mine this, you can't convince me that this terrorist went down to New Orleans and just showed up and said, "Oh, look, a gap for me to get into." I believe that he had been down there scoping it out, planning it out, looking at previous events, and knew how to exploit the weaknesses. So, with law enforcement, they can do the planning. A lot of times they have to bring that to the mayor, city council, say these are the resources. They may get them, they may not. So this will all flesh out in the wash, Shiloh. We'll see what we see, but I don't think this was all New Orleans PD fault at all.
I agree with you, Glenn. And I want to ask you, are we likely then looking at a failure of intelligence or perhaps something far worse and maybe sinister?
Well, I believe it was a failure of intelligence, Shiloh. This FBI that we've got right now, look, you got
Terrible.
a lot of good people in the FBI.
Yes.
God love them.
The leadership, though.
Yeah,
it's awful.
The leadership is awful. It's absolutely awful. When this very first drop, the FBI spokesperson, I call her Miss Nosering, shows up and said, "Nothing to see here. This isn't a terrorist.
It's not a terrorist attack."
Yeah, even though the guy was flying an ISIS flag on the back of the truck.
Here you go. Literally, here's your sign.
Yeah, exactly. And in law enforcement, Shiloh, we call that a clue. And so usually, in any of your viewers would be the same way, right?
Yes.
It's this kind of nonsense, Shiloh, that has just absolutely got to stop. They've got to use some common sense.
So ultimately, Glenn, at the end of the day, who is responsible for making sure something like this doesn't happen again?
Yeah, on the whole, I'll say this, and I believe that most of my law enforcement partners agree with this. And I will say that it's all of our responsibility, right? After 9/11, we all said, if you see something, say something. And I want to say that to all the viewers. If you see anything that's out of place or not right, even if it's somebody that's not acting right, say something. It's okay to be wrong. We're not going to throw anybody in jail if they're not doing anything wrong. But if you see something suspicious, speak up. And then, secondly, Shiloh, we've got to have the right leadership in our counties and in our cities to be able to back law enforcement so they can do their jobs. I'll tell you, everybody's bragging on this sheriff in Clark County, Nevada. I've got nothing but good to say about that guy. He stood up, he showed up, he gave the facts. He said, "This is the plan. This is what we know. This is what we don't know." And it's that kind of solid leadership that you need in law enforcement.
Well, it builds trust with the community, right? To have a sheriff who will go out there and tell you, this is what we know, this is what we don't know, and this is what we need your help with to that end. So my last question to you, Glenn, has to do with the Texas connection. This fellow was born and raised right here in Beaumont and, of course, lived in Harris County. Are Harris County law enforcement officials working with the FBI on this investigation to maybe get to the root cause and come up with some answers?
Yeah, they are, Shiloh. That's a great question. We're actively working with the FBI office here in Houston. I wish our Harris County sheriff would stand up and take notes from Clark County and give us updates. You know, that's the job of a sheriff. Clark County sheriff said, "Hey, this is my county. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to lead this thing and I'm going to work with the FBI partners." And he was taking the lead on it. Here, our sheriff is AWOL. I don't know where he's at. Needless to say that we do have great men and women in the Harris County Sheriff's Department. They are working with the FBI, and they've got a lot of work to do. But yeah, they're getting it done, Shiloh.
Well, Glenn, as you well know, I have nothing but tremendous respect for law enforcement. I want to thank you for coming on tonight and talking with our viewers about this situation that unfortunately occurred far too close to home.
Right. Yeah. And thank God he didn't stop in Beaumont. I got a lot of family over there.
Yes. Well, God bless you, Glenn, and may God continue to bless the great state of Texas.
Thank you, Shiloh.
Stay dialed in to interviews and content just like this by clicking that follow button on my Facebook page, or hit the subscribe button to learn more about exclusive access that you won't want to miss.